Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for this webinar to discuss changes to the OEC background checks process. To access live closed caption in up to 5 languages, please click on the CC button in the bottom right corner of your screen. Once you click on that button, you'll be able to access the menu where you can choose the subtitles that would make this broadcast most accessible to you.
Muy buenas tardes y bienvenidos al seminario web de la OEC. El Departamento de Salud Pública refuerza la necesidad de prácticas continuas de salud y seguridad. Para los participantes en este seminario web, si quiere utilizar sus títulos o subtítulos en vivo, para activar esta función, por favor seleccione el cuadro que está en la parte baja derecha que dice CC en su control de video. Para cambiar el idioma de los subtítulos o títulos, seleccione la configuración y luego los subtítulos para escoger el lenguaje que usted desee.
Thank you for your participation this afternoon. During the broadcast, you may ask a question using the question and answer feature. And now, here is our Chief Counsel, Michael Curley.
Gracias por su participación en este seminario web. Para hacer cualquier pregunta, por favor presione el icon o la tecla que tiene el signo de pregunta. Y de ahora en adelante, pues entonces vamos a introducir a nuestro director del Departamento Legal, Michael Curley.
Thanks very much, Rachel and Iris. Thank you for the interpretation, Iris. And just to confirm, the entire presentation will not have Spanish interpretation. So if you do need Spanish, please follow the instructions that were just provided to select captions and subtitles in the English or Spanish. So again, if you need interpretation in another language, you can choose the language of your choice by following those instructions. So today's presentation will be to go over some updates regarding background checks and submitting background checks to the Office of Early Childhood, particularly a new step that's been added to the process for the new state police system called Cchrs. As of July 26, 2021, there is a new required step of enrolling in the Connecticut Criminal History Response System. And so we'll go through that process today and do a walkthrough of these steps. We'll walk through how you can now submit everything electronically using the 211 Child Care website. And we'll also go over the option to submit background check documents by mail if necessary. The OEC strongly recommends submitting documents digitally, so we'll go through that in detail today. We'll also provide a brief update on the OEC Background Check Information System, BCIS, which I know all these letters can get a little confusing, but just to be clear, the OEC Background Check System is BCIS, and the State Police System, which is the new step in the process, is called Cchrs. So we sent out an email to all licensed child care providers and licensed exempt child care facilities that receive care for kids. We sent out 2 emails to announce this new step in the process. The emails looked like this. And if you did not receive these emails, I would encourage you to check your spam folder, make sure it wasn't filtered out. And if you still didn't receive it, it's important to make sure that the email address that you have on file with OEC is current and correct. And you can do that through the licensing department, licensing division. So you can contact your licensing specialist or call the help desk. And the phone number to contact the help desk is 860-500-4450. And then this email also includes phone numbers for questions about Cchrs, questions about fingerprinting through 211 childcare, which we're going to cover in much more detail in today's presentation. And for general questions about background checks, you can contact the OEC Legal Division at 500-4466, or you can send an email to oec.bc@ct.gov. At the end of today's presentation, we're also going to have an opportunity to go over some questions. So if you have questions, you can enter those in the questions and answer chat in Teams, and we'll go over your questions after we go through this new process. So some of the key takeaways from today's presentation are that digital fingerprints are accepted much more than paper fingerprint cards. The digital fingerprints have a rejection rate of less than 3%. So more than 97% of the time, when the fingerprints are submitted electronically with a digital fingerprinting device, they're accepted almost every time. With paper fingerprint cards, the rejection rate can be as high as 40%. So I'm sure many of you who work in childcare and have been through this process before know how often the paper fingerprint cards are rejected. So that's something that's really important to take away from today's presentation, that as much as possible, it's strongly preferred to access digital fingerprinting. And 211 Childcare provides that service free, exclusively for childcare applicants. And so that's really the best option. The digital fingerprints are also much faster because we don't have to wait for them to be sent in the mail to the OEC, and then for the OEC to send them in the mail to the state police, and the state police to access them. So going through 211 Childcare, submitting your fingerprints is entirely free. They're submitted digitally, so they're faster and accepted at a higher rate. And there's no waiting for the mail. With this new state police system, Cchrs, there is now the option to submit digital fingerprints through some local police departments. Not all local police departments, but some can now submit fingerprints electronically directly to the state police. So that option is faster because you're not waiting for the mail. But most local police departments do charge a fee to take your fingerprints. So there is an extra cost if you choose that option. And again, not all local police departments offer electronic fingerprinting. So you really just have to check with the police department in your area to find out what their fingerprinting services are, when they're offered, what their fee is. And it varies by police department throughout the state. So we really recommend 211 Childcare. However, we know that not everyone is able to access that immediately because we have appointments available throughout the state. But because we're moving through the state, we can't be everywhere at the same time with the 211 Childcare fingerprinting devices. So there are times where you would need to contact your local police department if you need to hire or bring someone on right away. So it is a great benefit of the new Cchrs system that local police departments can now also provide digital fingerprinting. So check with the police in your area. And the state police barracks in Middletown, state police headquarters, also offers digital fingerprinting, which is centrally located in the state, and some other state police barracks in other parts of the state do as well. So again, you just need to check with the police department or state police barracks in your area. So again, we're also going to go through how to complete the new required step. We're going to walk through the process to submit everything online and schedule your appointment for fingerprinting online through 211 Childcare, or the less preferred option of submitting documents by mail. One other point before we go through that walkthrough is I mentioned that 211 Childcare offers fingerprinting appointments throughout the state exclusively for childcare, and childcare programs can host the fingerprinting devices. So these are digital fingerprinting devices that have that faster turnaround time and much more higher acceptance rate, much more accurate. And they can come to your childcare program to fingerprint your staff and other childcare applicants in the area. What you would provide is a separate room away from children and staff. Your staff get to book appointments right away, and 211 Childcare brings everything they need to provide the fingerprinting services, including following COVID protocols. And we have Valerie Grant with us in this presentation from United Way, 211 Childcare, who will talk more about this a little later in the presentation. And to coordinate a hosting session, you can send an email to this email address, fingerprinting@ctunitedway.org. Okay, so the email that was sent out, there was two emails, one in late July and one in early August, to announce the new step that's been added to the fingerprinting process. And it directed everyone to our OEC website. There's a lot of information on the OEC website around background checks. If you come to the OEC website from some other source and you want to find the background check section, you can click licensing at the top, and then there's a drop down for background checks. That brings you to this page here. And then right at the top, there's a section for fingerprints and background checks, which will take you to a step-by-step guide on how to submit the required documents. So as I mentioned, we're going to go through both ways that you can submit documents. You can submit everything online, or you can submit by mail. Before we go through all that, I just wanted to highlight this list at the bottom of this page that shows the 4 items that must be submitted with every background check application. So these 4 items must be included in order to complete the comprehensive background check: fingerprints, the completed DCF authorization form, signed and completed within the last 6 months, the signed FBI Privacy Rights Act statement form, and the new item that is now required is the Cchrs applicant tracking number with barcode. So that's what we're going to go through today. And this is required to submit any fingerprints to the OEC. This is required for all fingerprints that are processed by the state police in Connecticut for any purpose, including child care background checks that are submitted to OEC. You also see here on this page that there's a list of service codes, and we're going to go over this more as we go through the process. This is required for any fingerprints that are submitted, and each service code is related to the reason fingerprints are being submitted. Any fingerprints that are submitted through the Connecticut State Police need the authority in statute to process those fingerprints. So that's why we need to submit the correct service code based on the reason for fingerprinting and the category of childcare that the fingerprints are being processed for. So we have seen some questions coming into our email inbox and our legal division phone number about where to find the service code. And this site on our website is one easy place to find any service codes for childcare purposes. So again, the digital forms and digital fingerprints are strongly preferred. And so we're going to go through that process first. In order to begin the process, you can come right to the section of our website and click Complete Your Background Check Forms online. And that will take you right to the 211 Child Care website, where you can see the steps laid out here for completing all the forms online and scheduling your fingerprints. The first step is to complete 2 forms, the DCF form and FBI form. And you can click this button. It will take you right to the forms. This is what the DCF form looks like. You just enter your name and click to agree to authorize the DCF check and click next. That will take you to this question that asks if you've been employed in a child care facility within the last 180 days or resided in a family child care home within the last 180 days. The reason for this question is that we need to confirm whether a background check is required at this time. And if a background check has been completed within the past 5 years and the individual was either employed in a child care facility or resided in a family child care home in the last 180 days, then no additional background check is required. They have a current background check and would not need to redo their background check. However, if they've had a gap of employment or residence in a family child care home in the last 180 days, then they would need to complete an updated background check. And we're going to go over more at the end about our background check information system and how to confirm that status, but that's the reason for the question on this form. So once that question is answered and next is selected, then this demographic information needs to be entered, including an email address and the residence for the last 5 years. It's important to include the full 5 years of address history and click submit. That will take you to the FBI form, where there's required information that needs to be disclosed to anyone submitting fingerprints, including their right to challenge any criminal history record that is returned. All that information is explained here. And there are 3 boxes to check to attest that you've been provided this information and have read through the FBI privacy rights. Once those 3 boxes are checked, your name as entered previously would show here. Confirm that information is correct and click submit. That will take you to the new step in the process of enrollment in the Connecticut Criminal History Response System. Request system, excuse me. So again, the service codes are listed here. So you just need to find the correct service code for the reason you're submitting fingerprints. If you are working in a child care center or applying for a position in a child care center or volunteering in a child care center, this first service code would be the correct service code. So you can copy that in your computer or write it down with a pen and paper. And then you go through the list to find the appropriate service code for your situation. The last service code here is one that does cause some confusion, so we added this note to explain this is for child care facilities that are exempt from child care licensing requirements. That's typically a child care facility that's operated by a school district or a city or a town or another exempt organization, and also receives care for kids. So license exempt child care facilities that also receive care for kids would select this service code. So if someone is applying for a job in one of those facilities or working in one of those facilities and is due for a background check, this would be the correct service code to select. Once you've identified the correct service code, you can click to complete your Cchrs form. And it's important to pay attention to this note that once you click this button, a new tab will open in your web browser to take you to the Cchrs platform, and you will need to return to the 211 childcare website to complete the next step in the process once you've enrolled in Cchrs. So clicking this form, this button will take you to Cchrs, which looks like this. This is, again, the state police new system that is used for processing all types of fingerprints for criminal background checks. So here you would enter the service code for your reason for fingerprinting. Submit. Then a screen will appear to ask you to verify that this is the correct reason for fingerprinting. So we would look here for applicant type and see if the category of childcare that you are working in shows here, then it's correct, and you should click yes to continue. If for some reason the information here does not look correct, click no to return and re-enter the service code. Make sure that it was entered correctly. The next page will show the required fields in blue. So in Cchrs, all the blue fields on this screen are required. You cannot submit the form without completing each blue field. All the green boxes are not required. So if you have this information in the green boxes, you can enter it. It's optional to enter that information and provide as much information as possible. But it's not required to enter any of the green fields. All of the blue fields must be entered. So name, date of birth, sex, race, height, weight, eye color, place of birth, and email address. Importantly, it is required to enter an email address. So that's good to know before going to fill out this screen. Also, place of birth is a required field. And when you select a country, if the United States of America is selected, then you will enter the state of birth. If another country is selected, then that's all that's needed for that field. And for height, it is entered as a 3-digit amount. For example, 5 feet 8 needs to be entered as 508. So once all of the required fields in blue have been completed, you can scroll all the way down to submit pre-enrollment. Again, these green fields are optional and should be entered if you have that information available, but are not required. Once you submit pre-enrollment, click that button to do so, you will receive an applicant tracking number. So this screen shown here will appear that shows you your applicant tracking number and includes a barcode. You'll also receive a confirmation email that will contain this applicant tracking number and barcode. So we're going to talk more about this in a moment. For either option, whether you're submitting everything online and submitting digital fingerprints, or whether you choose to submit your documents by mail, this applicant tracking number and barcode are required. So if you choose to submit by mail, it's necessary to print this page and send that in by mail. And even if you're submitting everything online and submitting digital fingerprints, you must print this page and bring it with you to have your fingerprints taken. The instructions here explain that this applicant tracking number with barcode must be printed out to bring with you to get your fingerprints taken. Once you have that applicant tracking number, you would return to the 211 childcare website. I apologize if my internet connection broke up momentarily. Once you have your applicant tracking number, you can click schedule an appointment. So you obtain your applicant tracking number, return to the 211 childcare website, and then click schedule an appointment. That'll bring you to this screen where you can see there's a list of towns throughout the state where fingerprinting appointments are available through 211 childcare. Maybe somewhat hard to see with the small print here, but there are locations in Bridgeport, New Haven, Norwalk, Norwich, Newtown, and Waterbury. And Rocky Hill at the United Way of Connecticut headquarters is a consistent location that has appointments available every week throughout the month. And then the other locations are rotating. And again, if you're interested in hosting the fingerprint devices at your childcare program, you can send an email to fingerprinting@ctunitedway.org or call 1-800-505-1000 or 211. So once you select a location, you'll be prompted to select a date and time for your appointment. You can see in Rocky Hill, there are appointments available throughout the month. The other locations have less appointments because those are one-time dates, and some are recurring on a monthly basis and others are just one occasion. Once you've selected your date and time, then you would proceed to this screen where you need to enter your applicant tracking number. This is a required field. So if you've reached this point and you have not completed the step to enroll in Cchrs, you need to return to step 3 to complete the Cchrs enrollment. And then you obtain your applicant tracking number by going through the Cchrs process to get your applicant tracking number and enter it here. You also enter again your reason for fingerprinting and your date of birth as a month and day without the year. So once you've scheduled your appointment, bring your applicant tracking number with barcode to your appointment and have your fingerprints taken. And at that point, when you've gone through this process to submit everything online, your process of submitting documents is complete. You've provided the DCF form, you've provided the FBI form, you've had your fingerprints taken, and provided your applicant tracking number. So everything was submitted online and scheduled online, and then the fingerprints are taken electronically and submitted directly to the state police. And you're done. So again, that's the option that OEC recommends. If for some reason you need to submit documents by mail, that is still an option. So on the OEC website, there is a button to click to reach these instructions. Right here at the top of these steps that we went through earlier, you can click these instructions to submit your documents by mail. And submitting by mail, you'll need to print the DCF form and FBI form that can be found here and print it out directly from our website. And again, you would need to go to Cchrs and go through the same screens we just went through to enter your correct service code and obtain an applicant tracking number. again, once you have that applicant tracking number, you need to print out that screen with the barcode to be brought with you when getting fingerprinted. You can fill out this request form to have fingerprint cards mailed to you. And those can be provided to childcare employers, and staff can obtain them through their employer once they've received fingerprint cards. And once you've received the fingerprint card, complete all the information and find a location to have your fingerprints taken at a local police department or state police barracks. This link on our website does show a list of police barracks, state police barracks. However, again, not all of these police departments or state police barracks will provide fingerprinting services for childcare, and not all of them will offer digital fingerprinting, which again is strongly recommended. Once you have your fingerprints taken, all of that information needs to be sent in the mail to us at OEC so that we can process it and forward it to DCF and the state police. So again, this list shows everything that must be included: the completed and signed fingerprint card, completed and signed DCF authorization form, FBI privacy rights form, and the Cchrs applicant tracking number with barcode. So again, this is very important that if you are submitting by mail, not only do you need to bring that printout with you to have the fingerprints taken, it also needs to be included. The printout of the tracking number with barcode needs to be included with the envelope that's sent into OEC by mail. So that's the process to submit by mail. And again, we do recommend submitting digitally through 211 Childcare when possible. We understand that appointments are not always available in the immediate future in your area. So if that's the case, we do recommend reaching out to 211 Childcare to host a fingerprinting session at your childcare center or another location in your area. If you're not able to host the fingerprinting session directly at your program, if you can find another location where the device can be hosted in your area, we can arrange to visit that location. Again, the email to set that up is fingerprinting@ConnecticutUnitedWay.org. And I'm going to ask Valerie Grant from 211 Childcare United Way to just discuss briefly how that works when childcare facilities reach out about hosting fingerprinting sessions. Valerie?
Hi, yes, thank you, Mike. My name is Valerie Grant, I'm Director of Early Care and Quality Improvement Services with 211 Childcare. And the easiest way for you to start this process is to start with an email to fingerprinting@ctunitedway.org. Basically, just let us know that you're very interested in hosting a site, and that could be for your staff, and or maybe you are also willing to allow area childcare providers to also come and be fingerprinted. From there, we will connect with you and we will send you a link to a quick little questionnaire. The questionnaire is designed for us to understand the environment, and more than anything, we have to ensure that we have a secure environment to conduct the fingerprinting in. So that what the questionnaire will be mostly based on what type of setting we're going to be coming into, what the classroom will look like, will there be electrical outlets available and adult size furniture available. So once you complete the questionnaire and it looks good on our end, we will then work with you to book your session, which could be really based on the time frame that you need. So we do offer early arrival. We could also come later in the day, and we can also come during the day for your staff. So we'll really work with you on what will work best. There are some Saturdays also available if needed. From there, you'll receive an email that your location has been booked, and then you will receive a link to a form, which is going to be for your staff, so that we know the time frame of each of your staff's slots that they'll be fingerprinted in. Within that email will be directions for you to share with your staff this process, how they have to go on and complete the DCF form, the FBI form. They have to get their applicant tracking number. And meanwhile, behind the scenes, my staff is looking for your staff to complete those processes in order for us to confirm their appointment. So we will be in touch with you if we've booked a site with you and a few days have gone by and you've provided the staff names to us with their slots, but your staff haven't completed that process yet. We will be in touch with you to follow up and ask that you ask your staff to complete those forms so that we can hold their slot. So once all of your staff are booked, if there's any type of forms that need to be corrected, we'll be in touch with you prior to the appointment as well. We'll get all of that information done and corrected. And then we will follow up with a phone call the day before to just confirm all is well and when you can expect to see us. And then we will come and conduct the fingerprinting session. So along that process, my staff is very receptive to any questions that come up, any changes that come up. So if you can just continue to call or email 211 Childcare, that's really helpful for us at this point.
Thanks so much, Valerie. Okay, so one more item that I wanted to cover before we get into answering some questions is the OEC background check information system. So what we just went over is the State Police new system, Cchrs, and BCIS is the tool for managing all OEC background checks, because background checks through OEC include more than just fingerprints that are submitted to DCF. They also include the DCF check, an FBI check, and background checks in any state of residence for the past 5 years. So BCIS is the tool that's used to manage all of those various components of a comprehensive background check, and it allows childcare programs to have the status for each person in their roster to ensure they have their background checks up to date, and so that where you are in the process and that all your background checks are current. We've sent invitations to all childcare centers, group childcare homes, and licensed exempt care for kids childcare facilities to access BCIS. So if you haven't already, it's important to register and complete your roster. The links to do so are on this section of the OEC website, which again, when you navigate to the OEC website, you can click background checks and then click learn about BCIS. And the links to register and log in are here. You must register with the email that's on file with OEC. So if you're having trouble registering, you can email us, or if you don't have the correct email on file, again, you can update that with the OEC licensing division. I know right now it can seem like there's a lot of information that needs to be entered repetitively, but we are working hard to update these systems and connect them so that they'll all work seamlessly. And there's going to be a number of updates coming. The biggest update to BCIS is going to be launching in September, so next month. And we will be providing more information on that and scheduling additional webinars to go over the new process and the new version of BCIS. So keep an eye on your email inbox for updates on that. And it will take the process that we just went through and incorporate it into the background checks information system platform, so that will all be done right in BCIS by individual staff members or applicants, prospective employees. One other important note is that family child care home providers have not yet been added to this system, and they will be getting an invitation soon after our launch next month. So once the new version of this system launches, we will be sending an invitation to all family child care home providers, assistants, and substitutes to access this background checks information system. So you'll be able to monitor your background checks for yourself and your household members, and ensure that everyone is current with OEC background checks. OEC background checks are required at least once every 5 years. So that's another reason it's so important to have this system, so that you can see the status and know whether your background check is current or if you are due for another background check every 5 years. And another important change to the law that's coming October 1st is that new staff cannot begin work until they've completed their criminal portion of their comprehensive background check. So that's a change October 1st that is not effective yet. And so that's why this new version of the system that provides the status for everyone will be launching next month. And then as of October 1st, when hiring new staff, they have to confirm that their criminal background check has been completed and they can begin work, and they must be supervised until all components of the background check are completed, and then they can work unsupervised. So those 2 points in the process will be shown on your BCIS status. So that will allow child care facilities to look in BCIS, see when their new hire can begin work supervised, and then when their background check is current, they can work unsupervised. And if it will also allow for hiring someone new if they already have a current background check completed in the system, then they can be added to the roster without the need for a new background check, provided they haven't had a gap of more than 180 days in childcare. So again, there will be more information next month on BCIS, and we'll do a walkthrough of going through your staff roster and completing those steps. Today's presentation was really about the new state police system, but I just wanted to go through this briefly to show what's coming soon. So I know that's a lot of information, but now we'll get into some questions.
Mike, we do have a couple of questions. So one common question is whether or not folks have to do this every 5 years or just once, the digital fingerprinting process.
So OEC background checks are required at least once every 5 years. So it is required for whether you're in a child care center or a family child care home or a household member in a family child care home. All of the background checks that are required for OEC are required to be repeated at least once every 5 years. If someone changes employers, as long as they have a current background check within the past 5 years and they haven't been out of childcare for more than 180 days, they don't need a new background check when they change employers. So if you get your background check and you don't have any gap of more than 6 months in childcare, you don't need another background check until the 5 years has expired.
We do have some questions about, so I know we talked a little bit about locations. There's some questions about where specific locations and scheduling that people have experienced some delays in scheduling, as well as scheduling being halted. So if we could speak to scheduling.
Yeah, so again, I think that's a great question, because I know with the transition to the new state police system, there was a delay in appointment availability through 211 childcare and even through police departments, because everyone had to transition over to this new system, and all the devices had to be changed. And there had to be new devices that are compatible with the new system. So there was a period of over 2 weeks where appointments were not available. But now that availability has resumed. The devices have been tested and are now up and running. And so if you go to the 211 childcare website today, you can see that there is appointment availability in September and some in the last couple of days of August. And there's also other locations in other towns throughout the state. And again, if there's no appointments in your area, please reach out about hosting the fingerprint devices.
Great. There were some questions about hosting, and it sounds like emailing fingerprinting@ctunitedway.org is the way to arrange for that. We'll put that. I know the email address is reflected here in the presentation, but we'll post it in this Q&A as well. We did receive a question about the video and supportive documents will be posted on our website, probably linked through the news section. So just look for that there in case there's anything that you missed or wanted to review again. We do have some questions about completing forms online and then going in person, and also mailing in cards, and whether or not you need the pre-enrollment barcode. So for folks who are using different modes, how should they handle that?
Yeah, so it is possible to complete the forms online, the DCF form and the FBI privacy rights form, and then mail in fingerprint cards separately. Again, I definitely recommend doing everything online and strongly recommend digital fingerprints and not mailing in the paper fingerprint cards. But it is an option to complete the forms online and then mail in paper fingerprint cards. One other point that I want to mention there is that when you ask a police department if they have digital fingerprints, it's important to ask if they are submitted electronically directly to the state police, or if they are taken digitally and then printed onto a paper fingerprint card and then need to be mailed in. Because some police departments do take the prints digitally, but then they hand you the paper fingerprint card that you need to mail in, which again has a slightly lower rejection rate, but those fingerprints are rejected much more than when the prints are submitted digitally directly.
We have some questions about the background checks information system.
Okay, I'm sorry, Rachel. Just one other point, because I know you asked this as part of your question.
Sure. Sorry.
Is that when you mail in the fingerprint cards, you do need to include the pre-enrollment barcode, the applicant tracking number with the barcode. So you'll get that once you submit the Cchrs pre-enrollment and in the confirmation email as well. And that screen looks like this. And if you mail in your fingerprint cards, you must include a printout of this applicant tracking number and barcode.
Great, thank you for that delay. Sorry for my interruption. Thank you for the response. So we have a couple questions about the background check system, and most of them have to do with how background checks are flagged, how to add new members of staff, and if people have experienced some delays or reporting some delays with submitting paperwork and not being listed as either needing a background check or not seeing things reflected in the background check system. I know we'll probably have some more communication about BCIS in the future, but is it possible to speak to these concerns?
Yeah, so we will be sharing more information and doing additional webinars on BCIS soon. And as I mentioned, the new version will be launching in September. And I will certainly acknowledge that currently the process is not where we need it to be or want it to be. We have a number of updates that are launching in September, and there's going to be continued development beyond that. And the transition to Cchrs is another reason that the updates are not as fast as they will be in the near future. Currently, when documents are submitted, it does take time for the information to get into BCIS and then the status to reflect the documents being received or the background check being completed. So again, this is another reason to stress using digital fingerprints when possible, because the mail being received and then forwarded and then entered into the system causes delays at each stage of that process. So paper fingerprint cards are much, much slower than digital fingerprints. And once either process has been completed, it does take just 1 day for it to reflect in the status. So once OEC has received the results, it will be entered into the system, and then it will batch overnight, and the following day, the status will show the updated information in BCIS.
I want to be mindful that we're ending our time together. There are some questions about availability of fingerprinting appointments before the start of the school year. I wonder if one suggestion is to serve as a host site to increase availability for your staff, but there are a few questions around the number of appointments and availability and how to manage that.
Yeah, I definitely recommend reaching out about hosting if you're looking for appointments in your area. The start of the school year, in many districts is next week. So for fingerprinting appointments that fast, it may be necessary to travel to Middletown or Rocky Hill, where there is more availability in Rocky Hill at the 211 Child Care headquarters, or in Middletown at the state police headquarters, or to contact a local police department in your area. I would also say if the town that you're in, if you can't get fingerprinting services at your local police department, you can also check with other neighboring towns. Not all police departments will provide those services for non-town residents, but you can try other neighboring towns and see what their policies are.
Great. And finally, we do have some specific questions about specific situations that are difficult to summarize. So if folks have specific background checks, information system questions, where should they direct those to?
So for general background checks questions, the best email address is oec.bc@ct.gov. We also have an email address that's specific for BCIS, and that's more related to technical questions. If you're having trouble logging in or you're getting an error message in BCIS, the best email address for those questions is oecbcis@ct.gov. And you can also call our main phone number for the OEC Legal Division, and that's 860-500-4466.
And then finally, once folks are assigned this enrollment code that they have to send in with their fingerprints, is that the same is that the same number every time, or is a new code generated?
So that is a great question. So if you are getting fingerprinted today, you would get your applicant tracking number and use that for the fingerprints that you're submitting. Then if you're getting new fingerprints 5 years from now, you would go through the process again and get a new tracking number. However, if your fingerprints are rejected, for example, if you submit paper fingerprint cards with your applicant tracking number, and I mentioned that the paper fingerprint cards are very often rejected. If your fingerprints get rejected, you would use the same applicant tracking number to submit what we call reprints. If you're getting new prints because your fingerprints got rejected, you would use the same applicant tracking number to submit those new fingerprints.
We will compile these questions and answers and offer up further detail. But as Mike said, if you have specific questions about your specific program circumstances, those are best directed to our contact information that we've just shared. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks so much, Rachel. Yeah, we will be compiling these questions and posting more frequently asked questions on our website. So definitely almost all of the information we went over today is available on the OEC website in the background check section. And one other question that I know is very common, so I'll just touch on that quickly before we wrap up, is if someone has had a background check for a different purpose, like a school teacher, is that acceptable for OEC purposes? And the answer is no. Unfortunately, we would like it if it worked that way, but due to the laws and various barriers, it's not possible to accept background checks that were done for a different purpose. So, and when I say that, when we go through the OEC reasons for fingerprinting, any of those background checks are acceptable. Any OEC background check is acceptable for any OEC purpose. So if you were a family child care home provider and then you became a child care center staff member, that background check can be used. For any OEC background check, you can use that within the past 5 years with no gap of 6 months or more. You have a current background check and you do not need a new background check. However, another background check such as a school teacher, a bus driver, a gun permit, a nursing home staff member, we're unable to accept those background checks for other purposes. So again, we will be providing more updates, so keep an eye on your email inbox for more information about BCIS and additional webinars that will be scheduled to go through the launch of our new version of BCIS next month. And additional questions, you can send them into the email address that we went over or call us in the legal division at 860-500-4466. Thank you so much for everyone for attending the presentation, and thank you to Rachel and Iris and Valerie for your assistance.
You're welcome.